Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them. Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and welcome to Weird Games and Murder People. The guest today is a very special guest. He's a legendary game designer, creator, educator. He's the author of Fiasco, Night Witches, Skeleton, Durance, and many, many other amazing games. I'm talking about the legendary Jason Morningstar. But before I get into that, I would like to remind you to please subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. Leave us a review, tell others what you think about the show, what you can improve, what you like about it. And if you can, support the show sharing it with your friends, with your gaming group, with your community. And if you have any coins left from your left adventure, check out the show notes to see how you can support the show, paying us a coffee at Ko-Fi, or buying one of my games, or using our drive-thru RPG link to buy any games you like, and we get just a little small bite of it. So, getting back to Jason Morningstar, we started talking about time management, how he does his project, how he approaches his work, how he seeks the weird in the mundane. We talk about curiosity, we talk about seeking novelty, we talk about experimentation, inspirations, both in terms of games, in terms of other creators, in terms of art. We talked about how it's very, very strange and impressive stories that he has to share and learn a lot, has a lot of lessons. Jason has a very unique approach and way to work and the way to see games and examine how they teach us and how can they shed a new light on different things in our lives. And this was a very insightful chat, and I hope you like it as much as I did. I loved it. Jason seemed to enjoy it too. We were supposed to have just 1 hour of conversation, and I managed to get a little bit more of it, like an hour and a half or a little bit more, and I hope to bring him back someday. So let's get weird with Jason Morningstar. Hi, welcome Jason. Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People. It's so good to have you here. How have you been?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to have you here. I know we only have 1 hour, and that's one thing I would like to ask you about. You seem very, conscious about your time, what you can dedicate to doing stuff like this, like interviews. So I'm gonna ask you, how are you with your schedule? Are you a very you have a very strict routine? Do you follow your schedule, or that's the question? Like, how your creative day, your work day, and how you manage to be so aware of how precious your time is, and you learned how to say no to things?
That's a great question, and unfortunately, the answer is probably not what you would expect. I'm not a disciplined person. So the boundaries that I set around my time are more related to my ability to uh, just
Stay
focus and
focused.
handle the format. It's communicating this way is difficult for me. I find it exhausting. So an hour is about my limit. Although we'll see. If we're into it and having a good time, and I'm still okay after an hour, we can continue. But typically after an hour,
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
really tired. I'm sort of mentally exhausted. And I think that part of that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
just the way that we are communicating. If we were face to face, I could have a much longer conversation. And why that is, I'm not sure. Some of it might be that I don't get as many physical cues. There's not as much phatic communication between us. Um, there's no overlap. It's I talk, you talk, then I talk again. But
Yeah,
whatever it is,
yeah.
it kind of wears me down. So an hour, I know I've just learned, is about what I usually can set as a practical limit. In terms of my sort of creative day, I'm not as disciplined as I should be. I feel like part of my job is learning about the world and finding inspiration where I'm going to find it. And sometimes that means that I'll spend an hour in a way that would seem unproductive, but that ultimately might be productive. Going down a rabbit trail on Wikipedia, for example, or reading about something that's not related to my current tasks, but that is going to inspire me maybe in the future. So I do some of that. um, uh, the actual creative process sometimes is slow or counterproductive.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll put more effort into something than I should before, for example, playtesting it, so that the playtest is at a very refined state, which is counterproductive if the playtest
Yeah.
doesn't actually work. So sometimes that'll happen too, where I'll be like, well, I really want to design these cards. I want to make the cards look beautiful. And what I really should do is just put a word on the card
Yeah.
and then try it, and try it with actual people before I go to a more designy place. But it's all part of my process, and it's a very undisciplined process.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that too. Like I'm developing this game about petty gods, like inspired by small gods from Terry Pratchett, and I'm a bit out of basic rules, but should be writing like the GM part, and now I'm writing the jokes because I'm really excited about the jokes. So that's totally
Yeah.
counterproductive. And but you said something very interesting, that it's your job to go out there and have these experiences and be inspired to create something. And that's one question I have. Do you go out there consciously seeking new experiences, weird stuff, to make weird games with that?
Yeah, for sure. My entire life is about making sense of the world around me through play. And so
Wow.
I'm always looking at things and thinking, how could that be a playful experience? What is it about what I'm doing right now that could be systematized, made into a game that other people could replicate? What is the thing that's capturing my imagination and getting me excited that I could share? Because
Yeah.
the way that I share is through play. And so whatever it is, I'm always going to be thinking about how to translate that into a playful experience.
Yeah.
Everything I do, I can't help it.
And do you sometimes feel that this gets in the way of you sometimes enjoying those things? Like you're like experiencing a movie or story, and then all of a sudden you're not there anymore. You're thinking about a game or something we lose about this that you're experiencing.
Sometimes, yeah, yeah, it can be intrusive. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't. There's a thing
Do you
that
fight it sometimes, or no? Do you just
no,
let it
no, no.
go and okay?
I just let it happen. I just try to enjoy things as authentically as I can, and if it becomes analytical, or if it becomes, looking at it aesthetically in a different way, that's okay. I think I'm still enjoying it. But the way that I described that is that if you've ever designed lights for the theater, you'll never see a well lit play again, uh,
Yeah,
bec- because
that's true.
you're sort of on the inside of it, and I feel like as a game designer, I'm kind of on the inside of everything
Yeah,
because there are no real
yeah,
boundaries to the activity. So,
absolutely.
and I don't
Yeah,
mean that in an elevated way, or that makes it rare or special, because it really doesn't. I think everybody does that, but like,
yeah.
it's my job.
Art
It's
can
what
be like
it's
that.
it,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely, and it's just how I think about the world, and I'm fine with it. Like, I'm always delighted when those things connect, when they click,
yeah. I
and I
love
can give
this.
you lots of examples of that for sure.
Yeah, can you tell me recently something like that you were experiencing, and all of a sudden you felt the need to? Do you take notes when you have these thoughts? You always carry your notebooks to, or do you take notes on phone? How does that process work? Like
Mhm.
maybe you're watching a movie with friends or loved ones, and you have this idea. Uh, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not a note taker until I've like been struck by a project. So
Wow.
an example of this would be, let's see.
So you have
Oh
good
yeah,
memory? Do you remember? Because other, if
I
I
mean,
don't take notes, like gone.
yeah, no, well, I mean, I take tons of notes once I start a project. So
Oh, okay.
like, uh, I let's see. Oh yeah, great. So there was a time in my life when I was working a pretty low level job where I was dispatched to a research library to find specific articles and copy them for a physician as part of a grant. And that all my job was to take a list of research, go to a library, find those articles, and then photocopy them. That's all I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
What I was really doing was, I mean, I did that, but I was also like, I was in a research library. Like, it was such an interesting location, and there were all kinds of cool medical journals there. So I spent a lot of my time kind of goofing off, not doing my work, and reading from really sort of crazy old medical journals. There's a journal called the American Journal of Insanity, which was published in the 19th and early 20th century. That was just amazing, and it was full of crazy stuff that was very inspiring to me, and that led me to become interested in patent medicine and like quackery and like the fake medicine in the 19th century, and that ended up becoming a game called Cowboys with Big Hearts. I started thinking
Nice.
about, well, where's the game in this? What's interesting and cool about, you know, people who have to take laudanum? What is that like? You know, or, you know, alcohol tincture with cocaine and arsenic in it. What is that? And why is that interesting and fun? And so like that ended up becoming a game, all because I was goofing off at my job. And that happens all the
Yeah.
time. Like those kind of paths for inspiration are really common for me.
Yeah. That's it's. You're saying something. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
Or.
just another example. I wrote a LARP
Mm-hmm.
called Welcome Guests, and that was directly inspired by a movie called We Are What We Are, which is a Mexican horror film about a
Mm-hmm.
family of cannibals. And my game is not really, it doesn't have any more connection to that film than it's a family of cannibals that invite their guests over for dinner. But as soon as I saw the movie, I was like, this all falls into place. I can do this. I can make I can this is enough inspiration that I can actually build a game based on this. I want to play this. I want other people to
Yeah.
play this. And so like that was a one-to-one. There were no notes, right? I went directly to my creative process and built the
Mm-hmm.
game. Whereas Cowboys with Big Hearts, there was tons of research. Like I had all these academic journals and I had all these articles about 19th century medicine that I could call
Yeah.
on, and then I had to set it in a particular time, and I had to give it these medical things, right? So like it all came together with a lot of research behind it in that case.
Yeah. Do you think when you choose those themes and very specific experiences for your games, uh, do you choose them because you identified something of yourself in them? Do you express something of yourself when you're creating those games, or is this something stuff that you enjoy and you think there is something you said a little bit about to give the experience to people and kind of show them it's kind of a teaching moment. Do you think do you have games are like teaching tools, right? It's a place you can fail and experience these things. Do you do you ever think conscious about stuff that you want to express or teach through these games, these very specific themes? Because people say there's through very personal specific things we find the general, right?
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question, and I think the answer is somewhere in between because sometimes I'll learn about something. I'm often influenced by history or historical events, and I'll learn about something and think, well, I want to share this with people. This is an interesting thing that happened. These were interesting people in an interesting time. It would be exciting to play in that time and place, and I want to share that with people. And sometimes that's the incitement for me that makes me want to make a
Mm-hmm.
game. And sometimes uh, the thing that initiates it is a feeling or something, a state of mind or something aesthetic that I want to communicate or share. But often those things end up intersecting, right? So like
Yeah.
Night Witches is a game that started with me being excited about this time and place. I was like, wow, isn't that interesting that these women, fought they fought the Nazis, and they were, doing this cool stuff. And the more I read about it, the more I realized, oh, this is not a game about that. This is a game about something else that I really do care about in a different way, and that I want to communicate, maybe more so than my respect and admiration for these people. And so, like that, it often, those things will intersect. Or like Cowboys with Big Hearts, it's a meditation on frailty. It's about aging. It's about, thinking about mortality, which are things that are on my mind. So
Yeah.
those are the things that came out of this sort of interesting toy box of history that initially excited me.
Yeah, amazing. And do you think do you have any themes or anything you want to talk about, but you haven't maybe found a game to talk about it yet? New, some topic or some kind of, I don't know, value or philosophy you would like to explore, but haven't found the right vehicle for that?
Yeah, for sure. I am full of ideas that I don't know how to express, um, and that work games that I just don't have the technology to make yet. That is not an uncommon thing. Um,
Wow.
there are there are I have, you know ideas are cheap. I've got lots of
Yeah,
ideas,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
some of them I just, I need to put on ice because I don't know how to do them yet, and that's fine. I don't even really want to
Mhm.
think about them too much, because when I realize, when the technology arrives that lets me do it, I'll know, and immediately that those games will come flooding into reality. That's what
Flooding
happened
back,
with Night
yeah.
Witches. I couldn't
Wow.
make. I actually wrote a version of Night Witches in 2007, and it was just terrible. It was not fun. It wasn't good. I didn't have the tools I needed to do it right until I saw Apocalypse World, and the core,
Mm,
in Apocalypse World,
yeah.
was the right it was the right technology for that game. It allowed me to sort of parse that topic in a way that made sense to me. So
Yeah.
like, it took many years before I was able to return to that idea. But I no kidding. And when I saw Apocalypse World and read it and played it for the first time, I immediately knew that that was the right tool for
Yeah,
Night
yeah.
Witches.
Yeah. I know the feeling. I was developing this game too a few years ago, and I went to Gary Cohn and I played the game, a horror game my friend was developing, and happened that thing I was talking to you about. I was playing a game, but the system made me go into analytic mode, and my mind, I wasn't there anymore. I was making my game in my mind at that moment.
Yeah.
And that's things cool because I got this new game that I'm very, very excited about. But on the other hand, I was there with my friends playing a game, but then I wasn't anymore. So that's one of the things that I don't like about this. Is like I wanted to experience the game with them too, and I kind of didn't. So that's what I'm asking. Did it ever happen to you? Like you I don't know. There's a lot of this talk about being present nowadays, and I suffer a lot with anxiety. So I try to enjoy these moments I have with people, and sometimes just very special interest that I have with RPGs and game design makes me not do that. That's why I was asking this. Do you have this
Yeah,
or no?
I think it's a good question, and I do feel like I can compartmentalize. If I'm spending a special time with my partner, I'm not thinking about games. If I'm with my family, I'm not necessarily thinking about games. But
Yeah,
if I'm playing a game, I'm thinking about games, and I totally recognize the idea of, seeing a solution to a problem in a new game that you're playing and getting excited about that. That
yeah,
happens to me sometimes, where I'm like, oh yeah, this guy solved the problem that I had, and I'm going to steal his idea. This is great. Happy about that.
yeah. One of the questions I like doing here, and I don't know if you agree, but even though your games don't have like always super like the weird in the normal sense of saying like weird fiction and stuff, uh, but they work very in unique ways, and one of the things we talk about here is like weird is the new wonderful. So would you consider the games you make and the themes you tackle like weird? And would you try to define what is weird for you?
Yeah, no, I love weird. I crave weird. I think my games are weird. I think I mean like in some cases they're very explicitly weird. Like in Cowboys with Big Hearts, you're trying to kill death. So that's weird,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah, yeah.
and depending on how you frame that, maybe it's a metaphor, maybe it's literal. I don't know. It's not up to me to decide. So I think that there is there's a branch of my design practice that is explicitly weird. And the skeletons, you're
Mm-hmm.
playing fucking
Oh
skeletons.
yeah,
Like
fucking yeah,
it's weird.
skeletons.
Um, so like that's a thing that I love. I love that world and I love
Yeah.
playing. And then uh, there's also the sort of surreality of the mundane, which some of my games have. Like Night Witches is a deeply
That's
weird
true.
game. Really, really strange things happen that are disturbing and sometimes nonsensical as a result of this just grinding, uh, total war that's happening. And the dice are very arbitrary, and that's by design. So, like, you come home from a mission and somebody's just gone, somebody that was important to you, and that's
Yeah.
again, it's by design, and that's weird. That's not that's not heroic power fantasy, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's not the conventional word. That's true weird, weird. Yeah.
I feel like it is, and I think that it
Yes,
puts
yes.
people off balance or on edge in a way that is very deliberate. So I want that,
Mm-hmm.
right? In
Yeah.
Fiasco, there are no guardrails to where the game is going to go. And as a result, it can
Yeah.
go to places that are really unusual and surprising. And you're dealing with collaboration with nobody
Mm-hmm.
in charge. So that can get very weird very fast. And I love
Yeah.
that. I think that's great. And we can talk about
Okay.
the boundaries or limits to that or
Yeah.
how you can control that because too much of that is not necessarily a
Yeah.
good thing. But
Yeah. You
you
have to
know,
create a structure for the cows to be possible, right? Because if it's only cows, there is you have to be there is has to be contrast for the weird. Has to be the normal.
yep.
For the action, there has to be a moment of pause and tranquility. Everything only exists in comparison to other things. And you talk about Fiasco, and one thing I love about Fiasco is how your games also make failure very interesting, and because sometimes we always games are about winning, we have these objectives, these goals, we want to reach this place or that place, and in stories in general, we only continue telling the stories of the people who won, right, who succeeded, and how do you approach making failure an interesting choice in your games?
Well, I mean, I think it is interesting, right? It's part of the human condition. It's something that happens to all of us all the time, and I think there's a novelty to it, which is kind of sad. Like people talk about my games often in the context of failure or disaster. And I think that's because it's really in contrast to the majority of games that are out there, which deal with a very narrow slice of experience, which
Yeah,
is success and power. And if I'm making games that are about failure and powerlessness, it's fertile ground to explore because people aren't exploring it, and that makes it novel and interesting. I guess I don't know. I think also there's a cultural thing there in that my local culture of play, who are ultimately the people I'm making games for, like my friends that I love that I've been playing games with forever, we like that. That's something
yeah,
that has always appealed to us, and so that like since I'm making games ultimately to play with my friends, that's what comes out. Games where you're put into difficult situations and your chances of success are low and maybe bad things are going to happen because we like that and enjoy
yeah,
it. So that in that's an inflection in all my work, just making stuff that I like.
yeah.
And if that turns out to be unique or fun for other people, then that's a bonus, I guess.
Yeah, I was asking because in a lot of games, like you fail, like character dies, they're out of the game, and the players basically remove it. But you manage to, for example, Fiasco, you can have the worst results, but in the end, you're still gonna tell it how the worst results developed, and that's part of the fun. And I think it's something that games have to learn more. The failure doesn't have to end your participation in the game. You can
Yeah,
fail,
that's true.
and the game can maybe change in some way.
Yeah.
Give them some opportunity to continue to influence or have some narrative power or participation in there,
Yeah,
right?
and I would if you're if you're listening to this and you like Fiasco and have played a lot of Fiasco, the next time you play, have your character die in their first scene. Just give it a try.
Wow,
What's
yeah.
gonna happen then is that the game is gonna bend a little bit, and you're gonna be telling your character's story in flashbacks, and it works great. It's really fun. It's a very cinematic approach. You can see films that do this all the time, but it really throws a monkey wrench in the sort of traditional narrative approach that is very challenging and fun. So give it a try. It totally
Yeah,
works.
yeah. Yeah. Talking about Fiasco, I wanna thank you for that, and kind of reminds me something you talked about how you saw Apocalypse World and you saw that technology and took that to make your game. And Fiasco for me, like the play sets, like the dice, the tables, were really inspiration for most of the generators and things I make for completely different games, like more traditional adventure focused game, OSR games, and I love seeing how different types of games influence each other. And I want to ask you, if do you explore very different kinds of games? Do you play more traditional RPGs too? Do you seek these very different styles of play, or even play video games and other kinds of games to, I don't know, to stay up to date with the technologies you talked about that you were seeking?
I do. I'll play anything. Um, I have preferences and
Yeah.
particular interests, and I'm very much interested in novelty and things that are new technologies and new approaches, because I think that's the most fruitful place for design inspiration. So I'm always interested in what people are doing that are on the weird edges of games, for sure. So uh, yeah, like in my regular life right now, I'm playing City of Winter, which is Ross Kalman's game about refugee families making their way to safety. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful game. It's impeccably designed and impeccably produced. I'm just in awe of City of Winter. And then in another group, I'm playing Apocalypse World. We're playing a vanilla Apocalypse World, uh,
Hmm.
but of course we can't really do anything vanilla anymore. So we're using Apocalypse World Second Edition, but we're setting it in Siberia in 1994, just after the collapse of the
Nice.
Soviet Union, which works great. It maps very well. The psychic maelstrom is international satellite TV, and everything else just kind of falls into place. So we're having a great time with that. A little
Yeah.
bit of history, a little bit of post-apocalypse, but the apocalypse is the collapse of the Soviet Union. So that's uh, that's
Yeah.
that's pretty fun. Um, I don't play a ton of video games, more as a matter of time and resources than anything else.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan of Kerbal Space Program. I'll make some rockets. My friends are all playing Valheim, so I play a little Valheim now and again. But not I'm not a huge video game. I'm not on top of video games the way I am. I think role
Yeah.
playing games and board games and party games. I'm interested in all that stuff. I'm interested in the intersections where those things cross over.
Yeah.
And I think more and more there's a lot of blurring the lines between a role playing game and a board game, or a
Yeah.
party game and a card game, or whatever. Yeah.
That was I was gonna ask you about this. How was this transition uh, for Fiasco, going from this traditional book format uh, that you can find anywhere to now like a box set set? It's kind of like a board game, and do you see yourself doing this more often, making this kind of role-playing games in boxes? I love this because they look like toys and it's more playful, right? I don't know. I see it a lot like that. But one of my other concerns is accessibility. For example, getting Fiasco here in Brazil now is a box that's is way more expensive than was to get like a book because of taxes and stuff. So how do you handle making some accessible and let's first talk about how do you feel doing more box game RPGs and narrative games in this box set formats in the future?
So yeah, a couple answers to that. So one of the decisions we made, thinking about international markets and our international community, is that the original Fiasco remains in print. So
Okay.
you should be able to just still get the book and that version of the game, which is a much more accessible form factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's less expensive, it's easier to get. So if your store doesn't have it in Brazil, or if it's unavailable to order, let us know and we'll make sure that it is. Because we recognize that international shipping is a problem and the box
Yeah.
is much more expensive. Uh, the
They look
second thing is
fantastic
that
though, yeah.
the second piece to that is that, like a game it tells you what format it wants to be in, and more I'm seeing games on cards in my own design practice, because I really like the affordances of cards. I think that it's a really in one way accessible, in another way inaccessible because of shipping and things. But like in terms of actually playing a game, if all the materials are on cards, that makes it very straightforward, um, and very portable and easy to access. So the game that we have in production right now is a card-based game that will come in a little box. The last game we published was Desperation, which is a card-based game that comes in a little box. I got lots of ideas for card-based games that come in little boxes. Now, my partner, my business partner, Steve Seghetti, hates that. He wants me to make games in books because they're less expensive to produce and they're easier to distribute. And so there's some of that in our future too. I just have to kind of balance what the game wants versus what is practical to produce. And those are sometimes competing impulses.
Yeah. And do you ever think about doing? Do you have ideas for doing like games of things other than cards, like pieces and something you assemble or anything like this?
Yeah, maybe I'm not opposed
A
to it.
board
It's
game,
just
yeah. Okay.
it's a difficult if it's a difficult space to operate in. And I
Yeah.
look at like my friend Ross Kalman and City of Winter, which is an amazing game that comes with all these beautiful components. It's very elaborate. It's got a screen printed scroll and it's got custom coins and cards that are also screen printed, and like it's an elaborate production. And he's built a whole workshop to do it, but it's essentially a bespoke product. It's a work of art. It's not
Yeah.
mass produced. It's not an offset printing thing. It's unique, and because of that, it's also very expensive. And I just don't know. Ross is confident that we could do that kind of a game through his company, Heart of the Deer Corn, and that it would make sense. But there's a business case that is hard to make for that,
Mm-hmm.
and we struggle with
Yeah.
that. So like there are competing agendas there, right? We want to be a solvent business that is successful.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make cool things. We want to make the games that in the format that the games demand that they want to be in, and we
Yeah.
also want to make money. So like it's complicated.
Yeah. Well, Jason, one question we ask guests here is about maybe the weirdest game they ever played. But since we play so many games, I also try to ask maybe a very weird game you played recently that made you impression, made you think about game design in a new way.
Sure. I don't know the weirdest game. Well, so the weird. I,
It
I
can be
guess
a
the
recent one. Yeah.
sure, and weird. Like I think a lot of people think of weird as pejorative, as a bad thing,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
and it's not, right?
Yeah.
You and I agree that weird is good. We love weird. So for
Yeah.
me, I think the weirdest game that I've ever seen, because I didn't get to play this game. There's a game called Babcia, which is Polish for babushka, which is
Oh,
like an old lady, right?
yeah.
And this game, I don't know anything about it. I only saw it once. I only know one other person who's seen it. I've never talked to anybody in Poland who knows about this game, but it was a samizdat game from the early 80s. Someone in Poland had learned about role-playing games, and they made a game in Polish. It was mimeographed, and I saw a copy in 1983 at a game
Wow.
convention in Detroit, Michigan. I don't read Polish. I couldn't really understand or play the game, but it spoke to me so powerfully as a piece of art and a piece of expression, because I guess it was illegal, like they weren't. This
Yeah.
wasn't a game that was like for sale in communist Poland. It was a game that somebody made because they were excited about the idea of role playing games, and that's always been such a cool thing to me. That somehow maybe they heard a Voice of America article about Dungeons and Dragons, and then they made this game, and it reflected their own lived experience, and they loved it so much that they made it and shared it, probably in some covert network of friends, and somehow a copy of it made its way to the United States. And I always thought that was cool and mysterious and awesome and
Yeah.
weird and weird. It's a
Absolutely. I
weird
wanna I
game.
wa- wanna know more about it. How do you play? What's the role of the
Yeah,
old lady in this? Yeah. I'm gonna
no idea.
maybe ask some Polish friends
Yeah,
if
see
anyone
if you
knows
can
about
find me a
this.
copy of Babcia.
I-
Oh, that would be
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. A game that's weird that I've played recently that I love. I keep talking about Ross Kalman. I think he's really smart. His game BFF is a wonderful game that I would recommend to anybody. It's BFF means best friends forever, and it's a game about being girls, being like 13, 12-year-old girls, which sounds weird, and like I'm an old man, and that's a little sketchy, but it's a game that's just full of joy.
Yeah.
Ross wrote it with his mom Terry, and it's just a beautiful game about the experience of young girls, and you go on adventures and do cool stuff, and it's gorgeously produced and beautifully presented, uh, impeccably designed to be approachable not only for people like us, but also for like the people it's about. So
Well,
I
that's
played
what I was
this
gonna
game with a
ask.
12-year-old
Would
girl. Yeah,
13-year girls would like the game?
they seem
Would
to. I
identify
played it with a
themselves in the game?
yeah. I played it with I don't know. I'm not good with ages, but I bet she was 11 or 12, and she was into it, and we
Oh,
had a good
cool.
time. um, at Gen Con of all places. Uh, but that's another story. But yeah,
Yeah.
like it's just a great game. It's really fun. It's impossible not to just fall in love with it and get into it. But it's weird, right? It's a weird theme. It's a weird focus. Just
Yeah.
an unusual game, and I love it because um, it's so joyful. It's so positive, and it's so outside the mainstream. There's nothing grim
Uh,
about BFF. There's competition and pathos and adventure and loss and all the things that we love in games, but it's all focused in a very, very small world, and the stakes are huge to the characters in it, but pretty low in the broader scheme of
yeah.
things, which is really refreshing and nice. It's a very beautiful game.
Yeah, I love it because it kind of take us back to the thing that you said, right? To understand the world through games, right? So to see a little bit this reality of 13-year-olds and know the world a little better and be more empathetic to other people, right? To be feel more connected to the community and not think that our reality is how we judge everybody, right? So I think games have this
Yeah.
very important role. And talking a little bit this, and don't usually ask this question, but do you think you learned a lot through the games you played in your life, or do you you talked about understand the word a little better too. Then, can you give us an example or something you managed to understand about the word through a game you made or played?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's all kinds of examples of that. I feel like anytime that you engage meaningfully and thoughtfully with other people, you're going to learn things about yourself and them. And games are just a mediated way to do that, right? So, like, I can
Mm-hmm.
have a lovely time with my friends just hanging out on the porch. And we do that sometimes. Sometimes on game night, I have a Thursday night game night. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we're just like, we're not feeling it tonight. Let's just be friends and talk. And I learn from them when we do that as much as I do when we play games together. So, games are a way to mediate that experience, but that's not unique or special. I don't think there's
Mm-hmm.
anything special about the social interaction that's involved in playing a game. Um, I think that you can learn a lot from games that have something to show you very specifically. So, like, if you play Night Witches, you're going to experience some pretty harsh sexism, and it's bounded by the experience of the game. But if you're a dude who's never experienced sexism, that's probably really good for you, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
probably something where you can take that and have some empathy that emerges from that experience. I hope so. I don't know for sure, but that's
Yeah.
definitely something that I would like for you to take away from the game. Um, and so, yes, I think that you can get both specific and just general knowledge or empathy or learning
Yeah.
from games and playful experiences. Yeah, I sure hope so. I want that in the world.
Yeah. My question is, you said you use them to learn about the word, to understand the word, and I want to know if could you give us an example of something you managed to understand or know a little better about the word through the game you played or created?
Sure. I made a LARP uh, called Sarai. That's about, and the premise of Sarai is that we are all stakeholders in on a planet far away. It's a science fiction game, and on this planet there are these various factions that are really at odds with each other that just can't seem to get along. And and they're all local to this planet. They're all indigenous, and there's another force that's like a galactic empire that has people here that are trying to mediate things. And this galactic empire has sent peacekeeping troops, and they've sent diplomats, and they're trying to moderate and prevent a civil war. They're trying to prevent a bloody conflict on this planet. That's what the game's about. And it's a game. It was inspired by reading Robert Fisk's book "Pity the Nation," which is about the civil war in Lebanon in the '80s. And it's a beautiful piece of journalism. It's a great book that does a good job of describing what happened in Lebanon in the '80s. And when I read it, I thought, I want people to see this, and I want them to engage with this, and I want them to see the tensions that were at play that inevitably led to a civil war in Lebanon. And I don't think they're going to do that if I assign them the roles of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine or the Syrian Army or the Sunni mullahs or these
Mm-hmm.
various factions that are going to be a little too close to home and a little
Too
uncomfortable
closer.
to portray. So I abstracted that. I made it space Lebanon. I don't even tell you that when you play the game. And then afterward, we can have a discussion about it. And through playing that game, particularly in some of the roles that get vilified from a Western point of view, you really you develop a more, I feel, a more nuanced understanding of that conflict. And you can see why
Mm-hmm.
things happen the way they did, even though it's very abstracted. But I think that's a good example of something that
Yeah.
games can do that is that's beneficial, right? Because you
Yeah.
can look at this historical moment and say, I have a better appreciation of all the moving pieces and why things turned out the way they did, because ours turned out even worse. So maybe these people were trying pretty hard not to have it spiral into disaster, and it did anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking a little bit about these inspirations that you have, I know as creators, game designers, and artists, we are always seeking this, ideas and analyzing everything that we go through. But sometimes you also have a special place for a period of time or certain aspect of culture. I, for myself, draw a lot of, because of my childhood, I had a refuge in some comics, movies, pop culture, and I draw a lot from that too, obviously through new lenses because I've grown. But can you identify anything for yourself that you see constantly going back through and drawing inspiration from?
Yeah, I think you can, if you look at my body of work, you'll see that I'm really interested in the 19th century, um, particularly the 19th century in the United States. So that's a thing that pops up occasionally. Um, 20th century history, also very interesting to me. I'm interested in the Edwardian period. I'm interested in the Second World War. I'm interested in the Cold War. Those are all things that pop up in my games quite a bit. The early modern period, particularly the early modern period in Western Europe. These are areas that I have a lot of interest in, and that I find games in as I read about them. So I got lots of games that all that stuff uh, aligns with. I'm interested in the Bronze Age. I've got some Bronze Age games and
Yeah, history,
ideas,
right?
just
History is
history
something.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
I do not have any background in comics. I don't have any background in. I don't know. I've seen a lot of. I have a lot of background in film. I'm interested in film, but I don't think that I'm really influenced by. I don't know. My interests are sort of niche within that. So
Yeah.
like horror movies. I love horror movies, and you'll see that in my games sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm interested in specific regional or national cinemas. I'm interested in the Czech New Wave. I'm interested in Eastern European film. Um, I'm interested in Korean film. So like that stuff, it's a little more. It's probably not as obvious the way that those things sometimes manifest themselves.
Have you
I don't
watched
know.
any
Yeah.
movies from Brazil that you like it ever or
Oh, I
not?
mean, City of God, right?
Yeah, that's
Is a movie that that's like a top 10 for me. I really, really like it. I don't know.
awesome.
I don't know how
Yeah,
you
yeah,
feel as a Brazilian, whether that's a good movie
yeah.
or not, but I really like it.
I live in Rio, the city, where it is, and it's pretty. It is scary as hell here. So yeah, it's accurate in a way. So yeah. Uh, and talking a little bit about this interest in you in history, do you identify any where did you came from? How did you got so into this historic stuff? Or your did you study history, or your parents were
Mhm.
very into history, or
I don't know where it came
just
from,
happened?
honestly. Yeah, my parents are not real history people. My dad was a gamer. He played
Hmm.
war games, so I was maybe that's part of it. Was that there were always like you know, hex and
Pieces and
chit war
dices and yeah,
games and stuff around
yeah.
my house. But I wasn't allowed to touch that stuff, so
Oh,
it was always a little bit special and mysterious to me.
yeah,
Um, uh, so yeah, like I don't know,
yeah,
it's a natural interest that sort of grew
mm-hmm.
as I grew. I'm
Yeah.
also interested in performance and theater. I was a theater major as an undergraduate,
Wow,
so
nice.
interested in the intersection of performance and play as well. Augusta Boal and the theater of the oppressed and improvisation, and those are all things that you'll see, especially in my LARP stuff, sort of come out. So there's yeah, there are different threads and different
Yeah,
interests. It's not just history for me,
mm-hmm.
for sure. But it's an endless well, and
Yeah,
even
curiosity,
and
right?
yeah, and I think that people who uh, are interested in like fantasy, for example, if you're interested in George R. R. Martin style fantasy, well, you're interested in history because he's stealing from Geoffrey of
Yeah,
Monmouth, and I don't think he's real subtle about it. So like
Uh,
I'm just skipping that step and going right to the cool stuff in my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all fiction is inspired by reality in a way, right? So
Sure, yeah.
if you want to go to the source, reality has a lot of weird and very interesting things you can look for. So, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And I sense a lot of curiosity in you, not only for making games, but you're interested in other stuff. Do you have other hobbies, any kind of creative thing you do only for yourself?
Oh, I mean, I have other hobbies. Like I like to sew. So like, and that's not really a game related thing. I like to
Yeah,
hike and backpack, so I get out in nature as much as I can. And those two things work together. I'm all making little bags to put my stuff in to carry
awesome.
on backpacking trips. Um, yeah, and arts and crafts. My partner and I are pretty heavy into different arts and crafts. I like to make little books and um, stuff like that. That's not really. It's just expression. It's not.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not.
But it's great.
Not game related, for sure. What about you?
Yeah.
Do you have hobbies outside this?
Well, I used to have a punk rock band, so I was play drums, and I play video games, read a lot. I do also art. I do graphic design, arts, and write my stuff. I do a podcast.
Do you? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
Well, I'll have to learn more about
yeah,
that sometime.
yeah, yeah. But I'm trying. I was gonna. I love comedy, so I study comedy and stuff. And the game, that's why I'm writing the jokes in my game now instead of doing
Sure.
the
Yeah.
other product because it's something I really enjoy. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of stuff. I used to say that I was a public servant that wanted to be a game designer, and now that I'm a game designer, I want to be a comedian. So it's kind of stuff. Yeah, and talking about inspiration. So I always ask guests here about other artists and creators that maybe inspired us or maybe they learned something from kind of even though some artists and creators have never taught me anything formally. I study their work and see how they talk about their craft, and I see themselves kind of a mentor to me, kind of inspire me in some way. So do you have anything like this, any kind of artists and creators that inspired, or maybe you learned from them and model the
Yeah.
way you do your craft, or portray yourself in the space?
I don't know. I guess there are different ways to answer that. If you're talking about people that I'm in conversation with or that are inspirational to me as game designers, that's different from people whose work I admire or whose practices I try to emulate. So two different questions. So like there are game designers I love and that I get inspiration from all the time. Jackson Tegu is one. Jackson's games are beautiful and unique and eminently playable and challenging and sometimes infuriating and sometimes confusing and always really fun. So anytime Jackson Tegu has something new to share, I'm excited about it. And I think they're a brilliant person. That's an example of somebody that I'm just like in love with their
Mm-hmm.
design aesthetic, in love with the way that they think about games, and a big fan. There are people whose work I admire and whose ideas are inspirational to me. Christopher Alexander, who's an architect, wrote a pattern language uh, with a bunch of collaborators, but a pattern language is inspirational to me. I think about pattern languages in my own work. My friend Jay Lee and I wrote a pattern language specifically for LARP, just to
Mm.
try to identify use patterns that people could reuse. Um, so those are some examples. There are other people who I'm always interested in what they're doing, and I'll pay attention to.
Yeah,
I'm always interested in what Meg and Vincent Baker are up to, and their games are always great and always
yeah.
super interesting. Um, Ash Kreider is somebody who I love. I love their games. I love the way that they think. So yeah, there's lots of people both in games and outside of games, that I think are really interesting. And I try really hard to find sources of inspiration and people to emulate outside of games, and I think that's really
Yeah.
healthy. So
Yeah.
people who are performers that are not necessarily game designers or game players
Mm-hmm.
or writers or visual designers that
That's what
have
I'm
something to
most
say.
interested about. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for
Can
sure.
you... Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira again, and today I'd like to talk to you about one of my favorite games, a game that I created. And you know, if you listen to the podcast, I love dinosaurs, and it's called Primal Quest. It is a weird stone and sorcery adventure game. It's a NSR game, which is this game that caters to the old school style of play, but has more modern and more cinematic gameplay adapted to our modern sensibilities. It has adventure with dinosaurs, ancient civilizations, spirity, sorcery, aliens, elder gods, and much, much more. It's very pulpy. It has, a complete rule set, a mini hex scroll, an adventure introductory adventure. You can find it at Exalted Funeral, itch.io, Drive-Thru RPG, and your best local game store. And we're releasing more and more stuff for it, so stay tuned and play Primal Quest. So let's get back to the weird with our chat. Can you talk about some of them? For me, some of them are even comedians. Some comedians inspired some of the game stuff I'm making. So I'm always more interested about people that inspires you outside of the gaming space
Sure.
that you made.
Joe Sacco, who is yeah, he makes graphic novels, but they're graphic novels that are also journalism, which I think is a wonderful and interesting
Wow.
combination. So he's got a really clean, beautiful line that's very precise, but he's also he's telling very personal stories, not only of his own experiences, but also the experiences of the people he's interviewing, and fascinating stuff. Really great. His books are very inspirational to me.
Yeah,
The idea. Oh, go ahead.
it seems really like the stuff you're trying to make with your games. The way you're talking about them, it's very how I see some of your games too. So that's congratulations for trying to emulate them in games. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that for sure. Games like Desperation, where I'm really like I'm inviting you to tell the story of a real place in a real time. Yeah, there's some Joe Sacco influence there for sure. It's not exactly journalism, but it kind of is.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Inspired by that, the graphic novel telling your story and this very kind of precise in some ways and trying to tell something there, not only journalism, right? You're giving
yeah,
opportunities for people to tell their stories. So yeah.
there's a there's a game that I'm working on right now that is actually it's kind of a card game. It's not a role playing game. Kind of a board card game, and it's again it's almost a game about journalism or about thinking about current events in a way, because it's about collateral damage, which is a term that the military uses to describe killing civilians or unintended targets in war. And it's kind of a toxic euphemism, right? It's a way to distance yourself from the death
Mm-hmm.
that is occurring that you don't intend. Collateral damage, it sounds very soft. It sounds very easy to dismiss. So in this game, you are it's set in a historical moment, and you're doing a historical thing. It takes place in 1945, and you're bombing a particular building in Copenhagen as the RAF, the Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen, and that's neither here nor there. There's a setup for it, but the meat of the game is that you have a slider that you manipulate that is how many civilians you're willing to kill to achieve your objective.
Wow.
And you can put that anywhere from none all the way to 150 is where it maxes out. Or actually unlimited is where it maxes out above 150. And so you set that and then you play the game, and the game is, it's pretty simple, but it always references the choices that you made about the acceptable losses to achieve this objective. And
Wow.
that's very relevant today, right? Like there are things that
Yeah,
are happening in the world that I really feel like people should be thinking about that, and thinking about
absolutely.
where what kind of support and encouragement we're giving to countries that are making those decisions and putting that slider in places that are maybe
Yeah.
pretty inappropriate. So like that's clearly influenced by things like Joe Sacco's graphic novel journalism for sure.
Yeah. And it goes back to the thing that I said a little bit earlier about through the very specific personal experiences you can find the general and the universal, right? It's a very specific date in moment in history. It's one building, it's 150 people or more, but it's everything, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yep.
everywhere. You know,
And I deliberately
it's in
chose
my city, like it's Cidade de Deus in Rio. How many innocents are, the government willing to kill to, you know, get someone? It's everywhere.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you can clearly see that. The parallels are obvious, right? And
Yeah.
by setting it in, recreating Operation Carthage, which is what this is. There's clearly there's a good side and a bad side, and there's a really compelling reason why they needed to do this, and they were willing to accept some collateral damage to get it done. And the question is how much, right? Where do you draw the line? And
Mm.
historically, they killed 87 children to destroy this building, and that was way beyond what they were willing to accept. But once the ball was rolling, they couldn't stop it. So, uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and compare that to things that are happening today. 87 children's a drop in the bucket. So,
It is.
I think
Wow.
it's worth thinking about, worth talking about. And if I can create a playful experience that gets you to interrogate that and talk about it, then I think that's a net good. That's a good thing in the world. And maybe that's all I
Yeah.
can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know how much time do we have left. How are you feeling, Jason?
I'm feeling great. This is I'm fine. We can keep
Okay.
talking for a
Awesome.
while.
Yeah. Uh, can you do you identify any kind of maybe strength or advantage that you might have that helped you in making your games that you think that helps you keep doing what you do in your craft?
I'm not. Can you say that again? I don't understand. What is it that
Do you
you're
do you
asking?
identify anything yourself that you have maybe a strength or advantage that helped
Oh, I
you
see.
do
Oh,
your
yeah, yeah.
work?
I think my brain chemistry helps me. Uh, I am I have a tendency to hyper focus. I can multitask easily at the same time. So, like, I'm very productive. I'm making lots of things, and some of those things are successful, and some are not, and that's okay, right? But I'm constantly in motion. I'm always working on 5 projects at once, sometimes in
Wow.
collaboration, sometimes by myself, and I can move from one to the other. But often I'll fixate on something for a long time, which can be a benefit. Like that's in life. That's not really a healthy trait most of the time, but in game design, sometimes it really is. So I'm okay with it. I surround myself with really smart, wonderful people, and I have a pretty low tolerance for people who are not wonderful. So like if I try to cultivate friends that are lovely and good and brilliant and talented, and that's very helpful in my
Yeah.
line of work.
Yeah, for
And people who
sure.
are kind. Like I try to be around people who are not doing harm. Certainly not doing harm to me because I won't stand for it, but definitely, but not doing harm more broadly. And I think that's a good thing. to find those people and to cherish them and to
Oh
create
yeah,
relationships that are built on kindness and goodness and creativity, and works for me. That's very
absolutely,
helpful for me.
absolutely. Yeah, and then have you always been this way? Have you always, thought this value in people and looking? How did you learn to identify this in people to work with you? How do you look in this into them?
I mean, I've learned by living. I've had toxic relationships. I've seen what that looks like. I've had people be unkind to me. I've seen what that looks like, and I've gotten better and better at identifying it earlier and earlier. And
No,
still, like I think that probably one in like, and I try to help people as much as I can, and probably one time in 10 that turns out to be a bad deal, where someone is, just not
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 cool.
a
Not
not cool, not a good
reciprocate or
person,
not
somebody
appreciate
that
and stuff. Yeah.
I need to distance myself from. But that's 10%. That's a pretty low percentage, and 90% is great. That's a lot
Yeah.
of people that are, all those things that I described. They're just good people
Yeah.
doing good work, and they're fun to be around. So, like, that's a good ratio. I'm fine with that. And even,
Yeah.
as I get older, I get better at identifying that 10% earlier in the process and wishing them well and walking away. So
Yeah.
I think that's just lived experience. As you
Yeah.
get older, you get better. You get better at that, for sure.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say because we as humans we have this what they say now is negative bias, right? When something bad happens, it's the first thing we remember. We will fixate
Yeah,
on that. So it's very easy, to meet this, people that are not so, kind and close yourself. I'm gonna do this all
yeah.
alone. I don't trust anybody. And how did you learn to be this positive and say, oh, that's only 10%. There's 90% of good people out there. And was it all time too, or did you learn that from someone? Do you have any
I don't
kind of
know.
philosophy
Yeah.
or
I just like people. I think people are interesting,
okay?
and I've never met anybody who I didn't think was interesting. Everybody's got something cool about them that they can
That's
share,
true.
and so I just love talking to people and meeting people, and I think it comes from that to a large degree, that I just value people, and I think that's a very natural thing to do. And if
Hmm.
everybody has something cool about them that they can share, then why be a dick? Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
why be aloof or ugly to other people, unless they have proven that they deserve it? And on the other side to that, though, is that it's a big world and it's full of great people. And so if somebody is not great, then just move on, let them be not great away from you. And I've gotten better about that, I think, as I've gotten older too.
yeah. That's true.
There's
Yeah,
no need there's no need to engage with that. If somebody is going to be negative or hostile, or a whole range of behaviors that
yeah,
that are going to be damaging or harmful to me, I'm just going to wish them well and move on.
yeah,
And that's pretty has been pretty successful for me.
yeah. I love that saying from the penguins of Madagascar. Just smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
There you
That's it.
go.
Just
Yeah,
keep moving. Yeah,
I don't need to engage with that, and I just don't.
yeah. And now asking in another way, like, do identify any maybe disadvantage or weakness or something you would like to improve or get better at that maybe would help in your craft in your work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that the thing that I most identify in my own practice is that I'm really undisciplined. When I mentioned that I have 4 or 5 projects going at once, that means that it's difficult for me to focus on one of them. And so sometimes there's one that needs my attention, and I need to be working on that, and to the exclusion of others. And that is very difficult for me. And
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I own or co-own my own company. I get to decide what I work on and what intensity I'm going to work on it at. But that's a double-edged sword. That also means that we're not as productive as we could be, and some of the things that I make are unsellable, which is frustrating. So a little of both.
Yeah.
But that's I think that's definitely the thing that I would point to in my own practice as being something I should work on is my discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do you try to work on that? Have you tried methods or anything that could help with that and did it not work out or
Yeah, I mean,
just
I have techniques that I use that kind of keep me on track. I use calendaring to sort of force me into blocks of time to do particular things, and
Mhm.
that's helpful. But it's really easy to move a calendar block to tomorrow as well. So it doesn't always work, but yeah, I think I do try.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about this, like when you sit down to write, do you have any kind of ritual to help you get into the mood to get going? Some artists put on working shoes, a funny hat, some kind of music. Do you have anything like this for you?
No, man, I'm always ready to go. I'm
Oh yeah.
no, nothing like that. So my workflow typically involves opening a Google Doc, and then if I'm starting a new project, I will open a new document. I will sort of stream of consciousness write what the idea is, what the game is going to be about.
Yeah.
Um, and then I break it down, not necessarily in an outline, but in the functional units. And my games often have a structure to them. So there'll be a fact box at the beginning that tells you who made it, what the requirements are, what the likely content is, things that you need to do to prepare for it. And typically I'll know those or have a good idea when I start writing. So like, yeah, this is going to be a game that's going to be it's a one shot. It's going to take 2 to 3 hours to play, and it's going to have themes of death and powerlessness. And I want to make sure that you know that, so that if those are non-starters for you, that you can go play something else. I made it. I know where the art's coming from. Whatever, you know. So like that's something that's going to be at the top. There's going to be a discussion of safer play, what you have to do before you play the game, what the procedures for play are, what the materials, like all that
Mhm.
stuff kind of falls into place and is generally pretty similar one game to the next. And so all that stuff can be part of the document right away. And then I have to think about, what does the game want to be? How does it want to be presented? How am I in conversation with the game in my head? And then the designy piece of it begins. And that all can happen usually in a Google Doc, or sometimes there'll be a spreadsheet. If it's a game with cards, there'll be a spreadsheet that I'll make.
Oh
And
yeah.
then whatever else it needs comes from there. If there's research, I'll have a folder full of documents that I've got PDFs of, or clippings, and it varies from project to project. Sometimes
Yeah.
there's an art board, a vision board, things like that.
That's great. It reminds me when I do this too. Like I do kind of this stream of consciousness, and then I try to write a table of contents for the game, and then I'm
Mm,
filling it and then modifying it as I go.
for sure,
And
yeah.
Jason, since this is a Weird Games and Weirder People podcast. We are over 1 hour, and I now usually ask maybe some more personal questions and experiences about the weird that maybe you have experienced it.
Yeah, let's
So
do it. I've seen
let's
some
do
weird
it.
stuff in my time.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I usually start a little bit with spirituality and religion and maybe philosophy. Do you do you have anything like this for you? Are you a religious person? Do you have any sort of your spirituality or follow any kind of philosophy that helps you navigate the weird life that we live in this flying ball?
I don't. I am very much an a-religious person, but my partner is kind of a animist witch, so I'm happy to go along with what she's up to, and respect those traditions. Appreciate nature as a powerful and beautiful thing. So no, I don't really have any spiritual beliefs or practices of my own, but I am
Yeah.
sort of surrounded by a little bit of that.
Yeah. Do you believe in God, or do you believe in these spirits, or anything supernatural, any kind of even though you're not religious or spiritual yourself, do you believe in those things could exist
No, I
at
don't.
least?
I don't. I don't think so. I'm an atheist. Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah. And but you did talk, about kindness, about building community, about helping each other, finding good people, and helping others, which is in a way kind of a philosophy, a set of values and virtue. Do you identify any place where you got that from? Even parents, or maybe something. Some people had religion as a kid, and even though they don't believe a lot of stuff, some of the values stick with them. Do you identify anything like this for yourself?
It's funny. No, my parents are both pretty agnostic. There was no church or religious upbringing in my life. They were open to it. They invited me to explore it on my own, which I did, and had some pretty negative experiences
Yeah.
with Christianity, evangelical
Mm-hmm.
Christianity, which made me decide that that wasn't for me. But they were open to letting me find that out on my own, which I did. My grandparents were sort of mainline Protestant Christians in the way that you kind of had to be in their
Yeah.
social milieu in the 50s. But I don't think they were
Mm-hmm.
particularly religious about it. It was more of a social obligation for them. So no, I didn't have much religion in my background at all. And I think, like I got it from maybe reading moral philosophy and then just observing good and bad behavior, and trying to
Yeah.
emulate the good and avoid the bad. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a strongly developed ethical framework that I can identify. Like I can't say like I'm a Russell utilitarian. I
Mm-hmm.
don't follow Philippa Foot
No,
or
yeah,
whatever. I don't have
of
anything like
course.
that.
But sometimes some tools we get and kind of help us, like in difficult moments, in moments of like anxiety, for example. You know, Stoicism is very, people read stuff that helps you in kind of meditations in ways like for anxiety and other uh, social, issues, that kind of things help you. That's why I asked that maybe you learned something from some place and that kind of helps you navigate this space. Uh,
Yeah, no,
right? Yeah,
I don't know that I do. I think,
yeah,
yeah, this is no.
yeah. Sure. And besides that, do you have any practice that puts you in contact with weird experiences? Have you ever, had any? Do you meditate? Have you ever have any space of deep meditation or trance, or out of body experiences? Anything that was a really weird experience for yourself? You like this?
No, I think that related to my hyper focus, I have issues with control. I like to be in control. So like I don't use any
Mm,
drugs. I've never drunk alcohol. I don't meditate. I've certainly never had out of body experiences or any kind of uh, uh,
altered
unexplainable
states of awareness. Yeah.
altered states. Yeah, I'm just not into it. It really creeps me out. It's something that I do not want
Mm-hmm.
and that I do not welcome. And
Sure.
like I've had experiences that were remarkable, but that were explainable, right? So like I've had auditory hallucinations when I was in graduate school and I was exhausted from studying. I one night I had auditory hallucinations, and it was alarming. And then as soon as I understood what was occurring or what had occurred, I was like, "That's awesome! My brain is strange.
Wow.
What a weird thing to happen. I understand it. I'm not in control of it, but it was a cool thing to experience."
Mm-hmm. And did you have, while you didn't know what it was, did you had any weird theories about what you had experienced?
I didn't. It was alarming. So in my case, and I think this is very common, uh,
Mm-hmm.
if people are going to have an auditory hallucination, it's usually when they're very, very tired, and it's often someone saying their name. So it was someone like shouting my name in my ear, which I knew wasn't real, right? I knew
Yeah.
pragmatically that this wasn't happening, and so like I just, but I didn't know about it. So I immediately went and sort of looked it up. Like, what does it mean when you're really tired and you hear someone shouting in your ear? And of course, if you Google that, there's a million people
Wow.
who have experienced that and have asked the same question because it's a very common thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, no, there was never a moment when I'm like, is that the voice of the devil, or whatever? I
Yeah.
didn't,
Yeah.
I
I'm
didn't think
asking that
that.
because night terrors that people have that kind of half awake, and
Yeah, yeah,
when I was a kid, I had one of these, and for me, I was certain it was a ghost, because I spent the whole
yeah.
day telling jokes about dead people, and at night I had a night terror. So yeah, of course, the ghost
Right.
about
Those
the dead
those
people I'm joking about is
those make
doing
perfect
something with
sense.
me.
Yeah. No, I've never experienced
Yeah,
that, and I really hope I don't. That's very
yeah,
scary sounding.
yeah. But you did mention you had some pretty weird things that happened to you. Could you talk to us a little bit? What those experiences were?
Yeah. Well, I guess the I don't know, the weird. I experienced some missing time as a kid. I was with my
Wow,
mom, and we had a very strange experience, and lost some time, which is pretty cool. And there were two of us, which is interesting. Like, it wasn't just me. I was 9, I
yeah,
think, but it was me and my mom, and we saw a UFO, and then we lost a
wow,
couple hours, which is great. Um, I don't know what happened. I don't know what was going on there, but we saw a weird thing. I have a very distinctive memory of that. I remember pulling off the side of the road to look at it with her. I know exactly
wow,
where we were, and we were on our way to my grandparents' house, and then we arrived 2 hours later than we were supposed to, with no explanation for why. Why? So I don't know what happened, but that's a weird thing, and it definitely qualifies as weird. I have no memory of it. I don't, or of
wow.
that missing piece of time, but maybe we were
So it
abducted by
was like
aliens. Who knows?
you got out of the car to look at the UFO, and then when you
Yeah,
got back, a lot of time had passed.
about 2 hours. Yeah, we were pulling into the driveway of my grandparents' house.
And when you for you were arriving at the normal time, and then you realized it were late, or
No, no, no.
uh,
They were like, "Why? Where have you been? We expected you 2 hours ago."
and for you it had been no time. For you were just normal. You
That's
just
right.
got off the car,
That's right.
got back, and drove there. Wow,
Apparently,
that's
yeah. I have no
yeah.
memory of getting back in the car or driving to their house.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
weird. We must agree
Yeah,
that that is a strange thing to happen.
yeah, absolutely. Have you seen UFOs any other time? Well, how was the
Oh,
UFO? Did you remember how the UFO was? The
yeah,
appearance
yeah.
of it?
I remembered in great detail. So this would have been in the late 70s, late 1970s, and it looked exactly like something you would see in Star Wars. It was uh, sort of rectangular, and it had tons of little details on it, and it was
Wow.
black. And the thing that's so interesting about that to me is that I, you know, I don't know what was going on, but the idea that my 9-year-old mind would contextualize it that way, whatever I was seeing, maybe I didn't understand it, but what I did understand
Yeah.
was Star Wars because I was a big fan and I had seen it in the theaters. And so maybe my brain was like, you don't know what this is, but let's call it Star Wars. Let's fill in those details for you. And maybe that's what was going on, because it seems very unlikely that what I remember and what I actually saw were the same.
Yeah. Did your mother remember anything about it? Did you talk to her
She
about this?
she did. Yeah, she remembers the same events in roughly the same order. She remembers it a little bit differently, but she remembers stopping, getting out, looking at the object, which she described a little differently. She didn't see the same way I did, um,
Yeah.
and yeah, like clearly something happened. but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what. The
Yeah.
the detail that she added to that story. Is this interesting? Is this good? Is this
Yeah,
good stuff?
absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, because whatever. Like I don't know how weird it's weird. The thing that she describes as being very unusual to her was that she saw this object in the sky and pulled over and was surprised that nobody else was pulling their cars over. That there was a lot of traffic and nobody else seemed to notice it,
Wow.
which is also
Yeah.
spooky and mysterious, right? Makes us very
Yeah.
special. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what was going on there, but it's pretty cool
Yeah.
to think back on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And did you have ever seen any other UFOs in your life, or
I mean, there was
no?
another
Right?
time when I saw something that I couldn't identify. That was a strange object in the sky, but it had no, excuse me, no relation to that
Yeah.
9-year-old thing.
Yeah. And what about ghosts? Have you ever seen a ghost or had any experience or heard any really terrifying stories about them?
No, I wish. I'd love to see a ghost. That'd be cool. Um, there's a I live in the southern United States. I live in North Carolina, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a guy who is an author who writes about ghosts in my region. And I saw him talk once, and he said, if you ever see a ghost, the thing to do is to yell at it, "Where's the money?" Because according to him, southern ghosts at least are often here because they've hidden a bunch of money, and that they're hiding it somewhere, and they kind of want you to find it. So if you say, "Where's the money?" sometimes they'll point to where they've hidden their money, and then you get a bunch of
Yeah.
money. So everybody wins. I always thought that was funny, and I would love to put it to the test by seeing a ghost and yelling, "Where's the money?" But it hasn't happened yet. So
That's the name of the game already. Where's the money?
yeah,
Ghost
where's the money?
hunting, treasure hunting, role
Show me
playing
the
game.
money, ghost. Yeah, you could
Yeah,
totally do it. I don't really believe in
that's funny.
ghosts, but if I saw one, I would definitely ask it where the money was.
Yeah, I just saw the joke to my kids. I don't really believe in ghosts. They tell lots of lies. You know, they're liars, motherfuckers.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't believe in them, but I'm scared of them. Right.
Yeah. And do you do you believe in anything weird, anything maybe supernatural, and in a way like horoscope or any kind of oracular power of anything that you put some faith in it?
I do not. No, I do not.
Okay. Okay.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
If you do, then that's great. You do you. And if it brings
Yeah,
you
of
joy
course.
or it brings you peace, awesome. I'm okay with that. And I'm
Absolutely.
not going to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
a dick about it.
Yeah,
There are things I
just
want to be
curiosity
real.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things I want to be real. I want like mysterious lake monsters to be real. And
Oh,
I want
awesome.
Bigfoot to be real. I think that would be amazing. And if there are animals that are out in the world that we have never found, I think that's probable, right? They're good examples of
Yeah.
that. So let's hope that there are creatures that have eluded human observation and continue to
Yeah.
elude human observation. That would be
S-
fantastic.
Some
I'm
pockets of
100% on
lost
board with that.
world. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's
There's some
actually one
stuff
of
back in the
go ahead.
rainforest. There's stuff we don't know about.
Oh yeah, for sure. There are places we haven't been able to explore. We're finding a lot more about the South American rainforest because we're now having the technology, as you said, to explore things they haven't been able to explore. So yeah, I'm excited about this. This is something I'm actually researching for my games. So yeah. Uh, One thing, this thing about things you wanted to be real in our words is actually one of the questions I ask here. But I begin with something different: is if you could live in any fictional, universe world, whether it's from RPGs, video games, literature, anything, what universe or world would you choose to live in, and who would you be there?
Oh man, that's easy. I want to live in the original Star Trek universe. It's a post-scarcity socialist utopia. Yes, please. That sounds
Yeah,
awesome. And I don't know who I would be there. I think I would probably not be a member of Starfleet because, that seems a little uptight. Uh, but uh, uh, but I would have no needs or wants. So maybe I'd be a game designer or some kind of artist
Yes.
doing cool stuff on Rigel 5. And that would be awesome. That's what I would pick for sure. No
Yeah.
question. You get to
Awesome.
wear all those cool polyester outfits. I'm down. What would you pick?
Wow. That's what I think I want to be reality. Star Trek. It's what I want to be in reality. In fiction, I kind of love Star Wars. I love laser swords and doing hand gestures and doing stuff. As a kid, I wasn't into Star Trek because as a stupid kid, there was always this Star Trek versus Star Wars. So I
Oh,
picked
you got
my
to
team
pick,
with the
yeah.
laser swords,
Yeah, sure. No, you
But
picked the right
yeah.
team as a kid for sure.
But
But
nowadays,
man,
I'm really more Star Trek is what I really want for
I
us,
think Star Wars is a rough universe to live in unless you're a Jedi, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then it'd be pretty badass.
The next question would be exactly what you answered. Think something about these weird fictional words that you would like to make real in our own world. You talked about making cryptids, making these really strange creatures be real. Would you choose anything else if you could make anything from this fictional universe and make real in our own world?
Man, I firmly believe in unintended consequences. So if someone answered that question and said, "I wish magic were real," I think that would be a real bad idea. I think that'd be a big mistake. So I'll stick with cryptids. They're gentle, reclusive creatures. They're not really going to hurt anybody for the most part.
Yeah,
But they're not. They're not going to completely destroy the world uh, by turning the air to ice or something.
yeah,
So yeah.
awesome.
And then like if I could usher in the age of the Star Trek post scarcity utopia, I'd be happy to do that too. I would wish that
Yeah,
for us.
yeah. And if you could have any superpower, what superpower would you choose to have, and what would be the first thing you would do with that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. There are many cool superpowers, aren't there? I'd love to be able to fly. I think that would be selfishly that would be great. Um, there are many variables there. Am I the only one? Does everybody have superpowers? Can you tell me that?
What would you prefer to be? It is. It's just a fun question. What would you and what
Uh,
would be the first thing we would do if only you could fly?
yeah, no. Okay, it's only me, and I don't know. I think I would fly a lot. I would figure out what the boundaries of that were. How high could I go? How fast
Oh
could I
yeah,
go? How far could I go?
experiment.
Do I do I have to
It
bundle up if I'm going to fly at a high altitude? I would experiment.
that's
I'd figure out the
really
variables.
relates to why the things you said about why you make games to make sense of the
Yeah,
world.
yeah,
So we're like
for
playing
sure.
with the flying to make sense of it. So yeah, great.
But I think if ultimately if I'm the only one with a superpower, that's a very dangerous position to be in, and I'd want to have something that would be helpful to others. I'm not sure what that would be, but
Yeah,
um, maybe I could. I don't know. Maybe I could generate unlimited energy or something. I don't know.
yeah. Be unique can be quite dangerous among us, right? So yeah. And Jason, the final question I have prepared here is: do you remember the last time you felt, just really happy and just grateful for being here and being alive? And if you do, can you share just what is that you were doing and when that happened?
I'm grateful every day to be alive. I think I'm a genuinely cheerful person, and
Yeah, you're very
uh,
positive. I love
the
it.
this last weekend I was at a book festival, and my partner was in a session listening to some authors talk, and I was in the lobby, and there was someone there who was writing poetry. They had a typewriter, and you could give them $1 or give them $5, and they would write you a poem. And I didn't have
Wow.
$1. I didn't have $5. I didn't have any money. But in that moment, I was just flooded with love for my partner, and I wanted to have a poem for her. And I thought about all the things that I would ask to be put in that poem. And I just realized how much I care about her, how special she is to me, and what a good team we are, what a good couple we are. So I'll say that.
That's amazing. And you said you were very positive, you have gratitude every day. Do you, although you also said you were very undisciplined, but do you have a practice of, feeling grateful or stopping and just appreciating the things you do, or this is something very natural to you?
I feel like it's more natural to me. I don't really work at it. And I should hasten to add that I have a lot of negativity and anger in me as well. But that is something that I try to be very conscious about, how I express it and who I express it to. So like I'm not an endlessly sunny, happy person.
Oh yeah, nobody
Downtimes
can
and
be.
anger.
Yeah.
But I don't express that in public. And I don't express that to people for whom it will be harmful, or I try not to.
Yeah.
But people who love me and who I trust and understand kind of who I am and where I'm coming from, they'll see that. And I think that's okay, because I see that from them as well.
Yeah. And I think that's a very good way of doing things. I talked to my kid about this, negativity, how it can spread so fast, right? Like kid, hey son, can you let's stop the TV and let's do this test that we have to do. And he spends a lot of time with my parents, which are not the most positive people. So they curse a lot, and then he goes, oh, fuck it, or something. And they say, hey, come on, let's do. It's okay, we can watch TV later and stuff. Because when we are negative, like we do this, like fuck, and start cursing, you can spread a negative to that person will get upset too, and they will curse too, and you become more upset, and things just grows, right? So we have to be very careful with this. So I'm glad you do this for the people out there, and also for the people you love, but also we have to be comfortable of letting these things out too with the people we trust, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Jason, thank you so much for being here, for giving me this interview, for sharing your wisdom and everything that you shared here today. I learned a lot. And do you have any last messages for the wonderful weirdos that might be still listening to us?
I don't know. I hope that people are just kind to each other and embrace creativity and embrace weirdness, right? Just be more weird. I think that's good for everybody.
That's it. Yeah, awesome. Can you take us out saying the catchphrase of the show? Keep it weird, everybody.
Keep it weird, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to code-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.